Hi, my name is Will Mydock. This is the lesson 15 final exam for MAN4120. And diving right in with some leadership concepts, I'm going to be speaking to the um, final four topics here from chapters 12, 13, 14, and 15. Diversity and inclusion, leading change and crisis, organizational culture and values, and then leadership and development. Now, the first section about why inclusive leadership matters. There's a few real important points about inclusive leadership, and most of it has to do with how leadership is interacting with your subordinates or your employees. There's a lot of different features of leaders that we've discussed throughout this course. I think that diverse teams is actually a very common concept, and it's really going to be something that leaders come in contact with. So, inclusion is going to happen, and I think that promoting this, getting familiar with this, learning how to interact with it is something that is going to be really important for leaders. So, I think it's not necessarily a kind of a chicken or the egg situation. I don't think inclusiveness is always going to be driven by leadership. I think it's just going to be something that happens. So leaders need to know how to work with diverse teams. Now, that doesn't mean that inclusion is always going to happen. So there is going to be cases where leaders may need to um, learn how to be more inclusive, but you also need to learn how to work with diverse teams. And that's part of becoming more inclusive. Now, this kind of drives innovation. I think I've spoken many times in different presentations throughout this course that the differences, the diversity actually drives innovation. And so having inclusive leaders actually allows the team, the company to grow better. It improves decision making as we're taking more feedback from different points of view. And so this inclusivity is actually going to be really important to the growth of the company. Now, there's some really high impacts of inclusion, which is going to be higher engagement. We're having different kinds of team members. So there's going to be higher engagement from those team members whenever they feel more included, which then leads to better collaboration. The more people are involved, the more people feel welcome to be involved. There's going to be better collaboration. And in turn, people are going to feel more welcome. They're going to feel more alive and creative at work. And that's going to lead with people wanting to be more involved and in turn reduce turnover, which saves companies a lot of time and money. Now, creating inclusion is one of the challenges. I think there's a few different ways that is best to do this. And I think that active listening is one of the most important features that a leader can have, really in any scenario, but specifically in inclusion because you're working with so many different types of people. Now, this also really encourages or requires encouraging participation. Leaders are always changing, leadership is always changing, you're always bringing new leaders, new team members, and I think you have to encourage participation to actually create that inclusion, not just as a leadership team, but also for your entire organization. Now, with this, you're going to be working with lots of different people giving different contributions, and I think we have to learn how to recognize those contributions, even if it's not the type of contributions that we would be used to recognizing. We have to learn how to work with those different types of contributions. Now, managing bias. Everyone has bias. I have bias. You have bias. This is something that we all have to learn how to manage. And we can't really manage anything within ourselves without having self-awareness. So awareness really improves our decisions. We have bias in every decision that we make, and we really need awareness of ourselves, others, and the situation in order to make good decisions. Um, Without this awareness, I think we've all seen people in our lives who are not aware. They don't have this self-awareness. I think it's something that I've really tried to work on over time. And I think that this awareness is really important. And then from having that awareness, then we have to gain that knowledge about our situation, and then we must act intentionally. So actually taking the steps to act intentionally is one of the most important steps after managing um, those differences and different biases. Now, leadership and crisis. This is a big, big topic because crisis is what everyone remembers. Crisis is what affects people's lives. It's what affects layoffs. It's what affects companies getting shut down. It's also what allows companies to grow or thrive and change. And so over time, crisis is going to be some of the most pivotal pivotal moments in culture and in organizations. So leadership is most visible during this time, and out of everyone in the company, the leadership is the most visible. I'm sure there's different situations where we can think of even more recently. For example, crisis with companies selling or changing or going out of business. We always hear about Blockbuster and the crisis that it went through. We hear about different companies that decided to sell and not necessarily crisis, but what would some people would be considered crisis. Um, Big multi-billion dollar companies selling and then having a new owner that completely changes the structure of that company. And who's the one person that we all talk about? It's the leader of that company. So leadership in these situations is the most important. It really requires lots of clarity, direction, vision. Many leaders are well known for their vision. A couple examples I am thinking of are leaders that are specifically known for their vision. They're not known for what they do or the systems that they build. That's all secondary, even though they're still known for that. They're really known for their clarity and direction with their vision. No. Like I mentioned, crises are really important times for companies. They're very dangerous or scary times, but at the end of the day, it's opportunity for growth for everyone. It's opportunity for growth for the company, maybe to take more market share, maybe to innovate, maybe to become better at something it wasn't good at, but also for every individual, for the leaders, for every employee, opportunity for growth and to get better. And I think leadership in crisis um, is one of the most important aspects of allowing your team members to grow. I think we have to give opportunities to each team member to grow, to other members of our leadership. We have to be aware that we're all constantly growing and that we want to help promote growth for the team members below us. So there's a couple different examples, and a lot of these are going to be big companies. Again, I mentioned a few in the past or alluded to maybe Blockbuster going out of business. I alluded to Elon Musk purchasing Twitter. I alluded to Elon also being very famous for his vision. So a very specific example is Satya Nadella, and she transformed Microsoft culture. She had a heavy focus on innovation, and as we know, Microsoft is a very large company. It's probably very difficult to manage, change, constantly changing technology. A lot of us use Microsoft. I'm currently using Microsoft PowerPoint. And so there's a lot of innovation that's happened over the years. All the different apps and websites and products that they have to have innovation. And Satya was a pivotal person in these times, specifically on innovation, but also in collaboration. She worked with many different teams, and collaboration was really important. Um, a lot of these different organizations um, really thrive or fail based on the collaboration that they have. There's several different points that we mentioned before, which is the actual product that you develop, the systems that you develop, but also the culture and employees that you develop. And part of that is collaboration can help improve employee turnover rates, and that will in turn be something that allows a company to thrive. Now, key traits in a crisis are clear communication, empathy, and decisiveness. Now, we need all three of these because they all work together. Clear communication is one of the most important aspects of leadership that we're covering in this class. Communication is the backbone of trust, and trust is really one of the biggest requirements for having any type of working relationship. Clear communication is very specific. It can't be unclear communication. Confusing communication is almost worse than no communication, so it needs to be clear. Empathy is a part of that trust as well, and actually working with your team members. We have to remember that we can't do this on our own. We need each other. We need to understand each other. We need to have empathy for every single team member and also the other leaders that we're working with. Now, decisiveness comes down to communication actually helps us grow, helps us work together, and actually learn about each other. Empathy helps us really understand those we're working with. And then we really need to have a leader who is decisive, who can make important decisions, sometimes controversial decisions, sometimes damaging decisions, but they need to be able to make decisions because if we're not moving forward, we're inevitably moving backwards. And that's one of the most important factors of being a leader. The whole point is that if you didn't need someone to make decisions, you wouldn't need a leader. We would all just be working. There would be no decisions to be made. And so it's really important for leaders to be able to make good decisions. Now, a couple examples and pinpoints about strong versus poor leadership. Now, Just like we mentioned, strong leadership is typically transparent and decisive, while poor leadership is typically avoidant and unclear. Now, many of us are probably familiar with multiple examples of each of these. Um, I think that strong leaders typically go a little more unnoticed because they're so transparent. And then poor leaders are a little more noticeable. We remember them. We remember the negative things that happened. And so I think it's really important to highlight the different aspects of a strong leader. Now, transparent doesn't mean that you're sharing everything. It just means you're sharing what needs to be shared and you're open and honest about it. So what does need to be shared is fully shared honestly, with the motives being shared, and different aspects that actually are important for people to be able to do their jobs well. While a poor leader would avoid these tough topics, they're going to avoid the conflict. They're going to be unclear about what the actual mission is because they don't want to step on toes. They don't want to cause problems. And poor leadership actually ends up causing more problems than ever would have existed. So this organizational culture flows from that. I think that a lot of the different culture that is developed, at least with what I've experienced and learned from, comes from these shared values and behaviors that we all share. Culture is built daily. And then culture not only is built by us, but the culture that you step into guides how you work. So if you come in and it's expected that you're 5 minutes early and everyone is 5 minutes early, it's going to really guide you to be there 5 minutes early. If everyone's always replying to um, emails and meetings and customers very, very quickly, promptly, professionally, it's going to guide how you get your work done. However, if you step into a culture where everyone's late, everyone takes a while to reply to their emails or to customers, you're going to be guided by that culture. If it's also a culture of not sharing information, or maybe sharing too much information, or maybe not respecting leadership and lying or hiding information, you're going to follow the culture that's there. Now, it's meant to be leaders that don't just follow the culture, but help reshape culture. But at the end of the day, culture does shape us. So we have to be really careful about the culture that we create and the culture that we're allowing our employees to step into. So a good example is well-known Patagonia. I'm a big fan of Patagonia. I have multiple of their different products and clothes, and I think that they have taken a real strong culture of environmental responsibility. They're really well known for this. I think their actions match their values. Now, is every company perfect? No, but I think that they've done a really great job of this and having strong brand identity with this. I've known this since I first started wearing Patagonia. You see it all over. You see what they do for their products as they make changes, as they're always making new changes to new products to make their products and business and production and manufacturing more environmentally responsible. And I think their actions really match their values. Now, how does leaders change shape culture? Like I mentioned earlier, culture comes from the top down and it is set from the top down. And if it's not, it's going to be unclearly developed from within. So leaders need to model behavior, and not modeling any behavior is modeling a behavior of avoidance or being unclear. So that's going to cause more people to be avoidant and unclear. So leaders model behavior. They really look for the team and the culture that they're developing, and that's what we look for whenever we're hiring for values. We're hiring a team for culture. We're not just hiring a robot that's going to do a job. We're hiring people for the culture, the culture that they bring in, the environment that they're going to create, the personalities that they have, the experience they have, and one of the most important parts of that is the culture, because we're working with humans. We're not working with robots. Now, part of this is the reward alignment, and this comes in with many different people in many different departments having different kinds of reward systems. And so it's really important to keep in mind that these reward systems can shape the culture. It can cause people to lose clarity, to have relationship issues within the company, to cause different cultural drama. And so having a leader that manages reward alignment really well is really important. Now, there's tons of different benefits of strong culture. I think we're aware of these: improving performance, increasing satisfaction, building long-term success, which generally means having a growing company, but also having the team members remain consistent, and that's best for everyone. and that includes increasing satisfaction of both employees and customers. Now, leadership growth is the final topic we're going to cover. Um, a lot of what we're covering is about leadership, and leadership really means influence. It's really important for leaders to grow in self-awareness, and really, we can't grow without this self-awareness. We need to know what we're growing. We need to be able to have open ears to feedback from employees and other team members about how we can grow, and that also requires a lot of emotional intelligence. I think one of the greatest things that leaders can be aware of and kind of have a measuring factor is their emotional intelligence. Now, future goals are a big part of this. We need to always be improving communication, practicing active listening, handling conflict better. Building confidence is probably um, it's kind of a secondary factor. But really, once you are becoming a leader, the confidence is going to be built, and it's more of a feedback loop. Once you can handle conflict better, you're going to be confident next time. You're going to get better at practicing active listening, and you're going to help build confidence of yourself, but then also build the confidence of your team. Now, at the end of the day, leaders are there for the team, they're there for the company. And so I hope we can all learn from this and become better leaders.